In this video, we're going to cover in depth how to go about purchasing property without using any of your own money. So let's jump right in. So when you hear people talking about buying property with no money, what they really mean is buying property without your own money, which is to say buying property using something called OPM, which stands for other people's money. Understanding and navigating this concept and deploying the underlying strategies using it is in essence the true secret to achieving full scale and maximizing your growth potential. Learning how to use other people's money allows you to grow exponentially faster than you otherwise would have been able to if you're limited to traditional financing methods and using your own cash to fund down payments, loan costs, closing costs, rehab costs, any kind of costs. Real estate can get expensive. If you don't have a ton of cash, it can seem really hard to get into. Even if you do have a ton of cash, you don't necessarily want to use it on down payments and loan costs and things like that. You want to deploy your cash elsewhere. Investments, maybe lend it out yourself. Why use your own money if you don't have to? You can just use other people's money. Now, when I say other people's money, most commonly what I'm referring to in this context is a private money lender. But this is something that we already do organically. And for people who aren't used to working with private money lenders or hard money lenders, that can seem sort of foreign and scary. So the first step in grasping and embracing this strategy is to take a moment and zoom out and consider that using other people's money is something that we all already do organically in our daily lives. If you have a credit card and you make a purchase, you are using the credit card provider's money. If you have a student loan or a mortgage on your home, you are using other people's money. Whoever provided those loans paid for something at some point and you are paying them back. So this is something you're already doing. You're just doing it in a way that is more strategic and actually earning you money. That is the fundamental paradigm shift that must occur for success. The strategic use of debt versus the detrimental use of it. Detrimental use is using a credit card to purchase consumables or things you don't need. Expensive watches and clothes, for example. The strategic use of debt is to leverage an asset in an equity position that's cash flowing, that'll appreciate over time, that you can depreciate and ultimately leverage the alternative means to get the money back, to pay back your private money lender, take some cash for yourself, and still be in a healthy cash flowing position. In simple terms, the strategy is this. The first step to go about buying property without using any of your money is to find a property that you can get at a discount. That's the first critical step to really hammer home for this strategy to work, is you must buy at a discount. And I'll explain why. Typically, the best ways to find discounts are to find properties that are in distressed situations. Common examples of distressed situations are properties that are under foreclosure, whether it be pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, or foreclosed. Additionally, you can find distressed situations where the property is in probate, where the owner has deceased and the property has been inherited by an inheritant who perhaps does not want the property. Often they can be out of state, they don't want to manage it, there can be some debt on the property, it can be in a dilapidated state. Passing down a property to someone is not always a gift. Additionally, things like divorces, where property needs to be sold for the proceeds to be split, as well as things like code violations, where a property has an overgrown yard or some part of the structure is dilapidated and the manager's not in a position to manage it appropriately. An additional situation that's common is expired listings, where someone is trying to sell their home and they're unable to do so. Although those are generally better for seller financing or subject to, irrespective of the situation, the key point here is you must be able to buy the property at a discount. At a discount means you're buying it for less than what it would appraise for. And there's a specific formula that's very simple to use that can give you a good idea of determining what's called your max allowable offer, which is the most that you should pay for a given property. Now, typically when buying a property in a distressed situation, not always, but a lot of times the property will need some level of work, repairs and rehab. So because you know you need to buy the property at a discount in order to properly determine what an appropriate price would be, or said better, how to determine what your max allowable offer would be, which is the most you should pay for a given property, you need to determine two variables. The first variable is to determine what's called the ARV, which is the after repair value. The second thing to determine is what the total costs of repairs will be. And within that, you're going to include any work that needs to be done on the property, any closing costs, any loan costs, additional costs like utilities while it's being rehabbed, taxes, your total costs, all include in what I call your repair costs. And once you have those two variables, you use a simple equation to determine what your max available offer should be. And that equation is you take that ARV, whatever that number is, you take 70% of it, so ARV times 0.70, and then you subtract from that the total amount of your repair costs, and that number will give you your total max allowable offer, which is the most that you can pay for that property for it to make sense. Now, to determine ARV is relatively straightforward. A good way to do this is to search for 3 houses of comparable size, bedroom count, and bathroom count. So 3 like houses that have been sold within a 1-mile radius of the property in the last 3 months. If these houses are fully rehabbed and are truly comparables in size, bedroom count, and bathroom count, that'll give you a good gauge of what the after repair value will be for the home that you're looking at and what you'll be able to achieve on an appraisal once all the work is done. So you take that number, you take 70% of it, which is going to give you the equity that you need when you ultimately refinance it. Remember, a lender will not lend 100% on a long-term deal, except for some niche products. In an investment context, at least, they'll want you to have 10, 20, 30% equity. And by taking the ARV and taking 70% of it, you're accounting for that 30% equity built in by building up and rehabbing the home. So you take the ARV, you take 70% of it, you subtract from that all your costs, which would be new floors, paint, whatever the rehab costs are for what you're looking to do. And that'll give you the number that you need to determine the most that you would pay for it to make sense. And in that rehab cost, you want to give yourself a margin. You really want to give yourself, I would say, an additional 10% is a good way to approach that. Now, once you've determined this and you made an offer, you get an offer accepted, how you go about actually purchasing it is to use a private money lender who will loan you the money for the initial purchase, and that loan will also include additional money to cover the cost of repairs. A private money lender can be someone you know, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. There are many online groups where you can easily find private money lenders. They come in all shapes and sizes. They're really not as hard to find as you'd think. They could be doctors, lawyers, retired people, people with normal W-2 jobs, who are simply trying to deploy their money so that it earns higher interest than they would get in, for example, the stock market, without the fluctuations and without the risk. And if you do have some cash, lending it out privately is a great strategy to maximize your returns. Private money can get anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 to 15% depending on what's negotiated. The advantage to private money versus something like hard money is hard money lenders have more stringent requirements, although they're not as stringent as banks. Among those requirements could be a down payment requirement, things of that nature, and additional administrative fees that go into their underwriting costs and the cost to run their business. Hard money lenders are institutions, whereas a private money lender, you can negotiate better terms, lower fees, just generally have more in your repertoire negotiating to find something that works for both people. If you have a solid deal and you present it in a professional and elegant manner to a private money lender, where they have the confidence that you know what you're doing and that they can be sure that they'll get their money back, you really shouldn't have a problem as long as you're offering an interest rate that's compelling, meaning how much interest you will pay them for the amount of time that you're borrowing the money. Additionally, you can list a private money lender as an additional insured person on the property, so in the case that something happens, their money is protected. You can also write them a promissory note, which is just a note explaining in detail that you promise to pay them back the money that they let you borrow at the set interest rate over the set period of time. You can allow them what's called first lien position, meaning you are using the home as collateral in case you default on the loan. And you can also issue them what's called a personal guarantee, which means aside from the collateral, which is held under your LLC, you are personally on the hook to pay them back the money in case things go south. These things in combination can give the private money lender the confidence they need to feel great about lending you the money. And in my experience, if you're offering something like 12% simple interest, you'll be able to choose which private money lender you want to use. So once you've found a deal, you've calculated the ARV, what the repair cost would be, you've taken 70% of that ARV, subtracted the repair costs, made an offer accordingly, presented the deal to a private money lender, agreed to terms, they lend you the money, you purchase the property using that money, you then have the work done via your contractors. The next step in the strategy is to then take that property to a traditional lender and refinance it on a long-term note, a 30 or 40-year mortgage, whether it be conventional or DSCR. But because you've improved the property and got it to that new valuation, that new ARV, the note that you're taking out on it is on that number, which will give you the money you need to pay the private money lender back and hopefully take some extra and put it in your pocket, all while still cash flowing on the property. When done correctly, this by definition is an infinite return. You've acquired a property using someone else's money, increase the value of it, take that value, you go to an institutional lender, you use their money to pay the original private money lender back, you take some of it in your pocket, which is a non-taxable event, and the property still cash flows whatever your minimum benchmark is, which I would say should be 200 or above for long-term health. So let's really hammer this home now with an example. So before we go over the example, it's helpful to first get grounded on what the true costs are when purchasing a home traditionally, so you can see just why this strategy is so important. So when you're purchasing a home traditionally, let's say you have a home that you have a purchase price of $100,000 on. You're going to take that and go to a lender, and they are going to give you a loan for typically around 80% LTV, which stands for loan to value, meaning if you have a home you're purchasing for $100,000, they want you to have some skin in the game, around 20% equity, so they will give you a loan for the remaining 80%, and you will need to provide that 20% in cash in the form of a down payment. So for a $100,000 home, your down payment is $20,000. That is the amount of money that you will need to come up with in cash at closing. On top of that $20,000, you're also going to need to cover about $5,000 for the loan itself, administrative fees, brokerage fees, underwriting fees. The cost of money includes those administrative fees, and those are thousands of dollars in fees. Additionally, you're going to have to cover the closing costs, which is the title company, appraisal, inspection. So your total cost on purchasing that $100,000 home using a traditional mortgage, total cash out of pocket you will need to come up with is $27,000. Now that's a lot of cash and really illustrates why using a strategy where you can purchase property without using any money is going to help you scale exponentially faster. So either you don't have $27,000, and even if you do, you don't want to spend it each time you're purchasing a property because you'll run out of money really quick. So remember, when buying property with no money, you're going to purchase at a discount. Generally, you'll find properties at a discount when looking at properties that are in distressed situations. You're going to then make improvements to the property via repairs to improve what's called the ARV, the after repair value. For both the purchase and the repairs, you're going to get the money from a private money lender who will loan you the money to cover the costs of buying the home and the costs of rehabbing it. After you've done the rehab work and you've improved the ARV, take the home to a traditional lender, but because you have your equity built in, you can take a refinance note on it, put a conventional or DSCR mortgage on it without having to pay a down payment. And that mortgage will give you the money that you can take and then pay back the private money lender. All the money they lent you for the purchase, all the money they lent you for the rehab, covers all the costs associated, and hopefully keep some extra money in your pocket if you've done things correctly. So in order for this to all work, you'll need to determine the ARV and the repair costs. To determine the ARV, you're going to take a look at comparables that were sold. Look at 3 homes of like size, bedroom count, bathroom count that have been sold within the last 3 months. I have 3 miles written here, but really a mile would be better or less, so that you get a true accurate gauge at what your home would appraise for after it's repaired. You can then take a look at the repair costs, which you can get from contractors and different people who are doing the work. You can get quotes and see what needs to be done and how much it will cost. You total those costs up, plus the cost of the loan, plus the cost of the interest that you'd be paying your private money lender, plus any utilities or any taxes. So all of your costs are what equate to your repair costs. And then you determine what's called your max allowable offer, which is you take the ARV, take 70% of it, and then you subtract the amount of repairs. All right, so let's do an example of a home here where you found a property in a distressed situation and you want to determine whether or not it's a good deal. First things first, you determine what the ARV is. So you've looked at 3 comparables sold within the last 3 months within a 1 mile radius of the property. And you can say with confidence that based on those comparables, the ARV is $160,000. You've then taken a look at what needs to be done and estimated that the repairs, which remember include all your costs, loan costs, closing costs, interest paid to your small money lender, and miscellaneous costs, all of those combined will be around $40,000. Should be a little bit less than $40,000 because remember, you want to give yourself that margin in case anything is extra or more than you thought it was going to be. So then you use those 2 variables to determine your max offer that you can make on the property. So you're going to take the ARV, you're going to take 70% of it, and you're going to subtract those repair costs, and that total is going to give you an amount of $72,000. So for this property to make sense, the most you can pay on it is $72,000. So you get it under contract for $72,000, and you take the $72,000 and the $40,000 combined is $112,000. That is the amount of money that you'll be getting from a private money lender. That private money lender is lending you the money to purchase the property and the money to cover all of your expenses. You take that money, purchase the property, you cover all your expenses, and then you go to a traditional lender and put a conventional or a DSCR note on it. But because you've improved the property's ARV to $160,000, the 80% LTV that they give you is going to be 80% of that $160,000. So 80% of $160,000 is $128,000. That's the amount of money that you will be getting from the refinance. So you take the $128,000 that you're getting, which is the note on the new value of the property, and you take that and you pay back your private money lender the $112,000 that you owe them, and then the difference, which in this case would be $16,000, is what you keep tax-free because it's in the form of a loan. The loan is then paid back by your tenants who you're renting the property out to, and you're still cash flowing on the property a minimum $200. So you've borrowed $112,000 to purchase and repair a property that subsequently increases the ARV on that property to $160,000. $160,000 you then put a mortgage on, which is a loan for 80% of that value, which is a loan for $128,000. You take the $128,000, you pay back the $112,000 that you borrowed from the private money lender, you keep the rest, you're still cash flowing on the property, you got money in your pocket, and you are in business. You have just purchased a property using none of your own money. And then you repeat this process again and again and again. And in doing so, you grow at a rate exponentially faster than if you had to come up with a down payment and loan costs and closing costs every single time you wanted to purchase a new property. This strategy is what the pros use to scale and what turns beginners into millionaires. Understanding the nuts and bolts of this, which isn't as hard as you may think, just takes a little practice and a little know-how. But when done correctly, you not only can purchase properties and refinance out to cover your purchase price and your rehab price, but you can often get additional money and pay yourself tax-free while still cash flowing on the property. This is the essence of buying properties with no money. This is something you can do even if you don't have a dollar. You can use this strategy, make money using other people's money. So remember, you need to be sure you get the right ARV. You need to take 70% of that ARV. Some people use 80, some people use 75. I like to use 70 for the extra bandwidth. Whatever it is, you take the percentage of the ARV, you subtract the repair costs, which also include your loan costs, your closing costs, and miscellaneous costs, plus a buffer. That gives you the amount, which is the most you can offer for a property for it to make sense. You get the property under contract for that amount or less. You take the money from a private money lender to cover the purchase and to cover the price of the rehab. You complete the work, you refinance it out, take that money, pay back your private money lender, put some money in your pocket, cash flow in the property, and then you do it again and again and again, and you don't stop until you're ready to retire, which if you're doing this right will probably be never, because you'll get addicted to success and addicted to getting money. I promise you, if done correctly, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is stopping. So take the time to really hammer home the details, make sure you fully understand it, leverage your network to spot check you when you're uncertain, and go get it. This is the strategy being employed right now by those who are successful in real estate, and those on the sidelines watching will never reach their goals unless they have the courage to learn this material and execute on it in the real world. And with that, I'll see you on the next one.